Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivijagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gautamanandi. Yes. Hare Krishna. Are there some devotees here this evening who haven't been with the earlier parts of the Brahma Samhita seminar? You've all been here. You don't need a refresher. If you don't raise your hand, you're not going to get it. So, okay, fine. Very good. We're deep in the process of creation, or describing it or hearing about it from Sri Brahma Samhita. We're at the stage where it's technically sarga, it's the category of what Mahavishnu does to bring about the process of creation. And in this evening's discussion, it's Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is just about, verse 18 is where we're going to begin. Lord Brahma makes his appearance. Well, first the lotus from the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu appears, and atop the lotus is Lord Brahma. And we're going to hear about what the lotus is in relation to the Virat Rupa, the universal form, and the procedure of Brahma's making manifest the creation doesn't happen just yet. So that's the next major topic, is what Brahma does, the engineer of the universe, to assemble everything. But he's just about to make his appearance. That's where we are in the sequence of things. And as I mentioned this morning, these verses are not set up, not all of these verses. Let's try again. Some of the verses are in sequence of events, chronological sequence. Some of the verses are not in chronological sequence. And for that reason, we're discussing text 18, and then following text 18 is text 21. 22, because that's what follows in sequence. So 19, then 22 through 25. That's the subject matter we're covering this evening. So let's start with chanting together text 18. Shrikshayam tato nabhes tasya padmam vaniryayav Tan nalam hema nalilam brahmano lokam advutam. Translation. When Vishnu, lying in the ocean of milk, wills to create this universe, a golden lotus springs from his navel pit. The golden lotus, with its stem, is the abode of Brahma, representing Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Now, those of you that are a little bit accustomed to differentiating between Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Kshirodakshai Vishnu, the three Purusha avatars, the forms of Vishnu that are involved in the process of creation. Is there something about this verse that sounds a little unclear? Amritananda, what is it that's unclear? Okay, so say a whole sentence.
Ocean is where Kshirodakshai Vishnu is.
Okay, the milk ocean is where Kshirodakshai Vishnu resides.
Yeah.
So that's okay. This is the milk ocean, where Kshirodakshai Vishnu resides.
But from him comes the lotus, the stem of the lotus.
And that's associated with Garbhodakshai Vishnu.
Yes.
Is the apparent contradiction clear? Anybody unclear what the apparent contradiction is? Raise your hand. Okay. From whom does the stem of the lotus and Lord Brahma appear? Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Which of the Vishnus is lying on the ocean of milk? Now do you see the contradiction? Oh, that's because I took it out. Oh, okay. Here's the translation. When Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. So I was just following in Tamal Krishna Maharaj's footsteps, because when he gave his seminar in classic Tamal Krishna Maharaj fashion, he said it 10 times. It's an error. Take it out. It's a mistake. It's an editorial mistake. It doesn't belong there. Take it out. So I took it out when I put it here. But in his manuscript, he has the following explanation where he leaves it in. So there's the contradiction. The ocean of milk, when Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk, that's, you have your book. You have a copy. It says in the ocean of milk. I didn't remove it from that one. In the BBT printing. Yes, it says in your version. Does anybody have your book with you? Does it say ocean of milk? Ocean of milk. So there's the contradiction, okay? So what's going on? One way of addressing what's going on is it's a mistake. Nowhere in the word for word is there the ocean of milk. So when Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, it's a mistake. Take it out. So that's one way to address it. Then here's another way to address it. If you can remember, one of the out-of-sequence verses was text 14 describing Garbhodakshay Vishnu entering into each and every universe, if you can recall that. So in relation to that text 14, we discussed, so I'm now discussing it again here, a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela chapter 5. Because chapter 5 is about Lord Nityananda, and he's Nityananda Ram, so the way that Krishna Das Kaviraj expands that chapter is, he describes the 5 ways in which Nityananda Ram or Balaram expand. Sankarshan, Ananta, and the 3 Purushas. 5. So, this is text 93. Translation. From the navel of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu sprouts the lotus, that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. I understand some of you took a little warm-up course from Amritananda on cosmic manifestation or cosmology, Vedic cosmology. Little introduction. And one of the subject matters, whenever Vedic cosmology is discussed, is there's a hierarchical picture of cosmology, meaning there's the pole star or Dhruvaloka, around which all of the other planets are circumambulating, because that's the abode of Vishnu, and they circumambulate Vishnu. And going in a downward direction, now this is like the chandelier of the planetarium in Mayapur, the Brahmaloka, and then going down, Janaloka, Maharloka, Tapaloka, and down. there's a vertical structure of our universe. And what's being said in this verse is they're all within the stem of the lotus of Lord Brahma. It's a big stem. It's a big lotus. He's a big devotee. Vertically, they're all situated within. So here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. Again, it's Adi 593. In the Mahabharata, Shanti Parva, it is said that he who is Pradyumna of the Chakravyuha, he who is Pradyumna, is also Aniruddha. He is also the father of Brahma. It's Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Thus, Garbhodakshay Vishnu and Kshirodakshay Vishnu are identical plenary expansions of Pradyumna. You with me? We did the quadrants, the quadrangular region surrounding Goloka. Going down, there's the Vaikuntha realm where there's also the same Chaturvyuha. And of them, Pradyumna is one. And from Pradyumna expand, we say Mahavishnu expands, but even more technically, from Pradyumna expands Karnadakshay or Kshirodakshay Vishnu and Garbhodakshay Vishnu, according to Mahabharata Shanti Parva. It is Pradyumna who gives Brahma direction for cosmic management. Well, it's his father, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, so it's an expansion of the Lord of Brahma. Who does he pray to? He prays to Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is an expansion of Pradyumna. Paragraph. Lagu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami's text describing the avatar forms of the Lord, says that Garbhodakshay Vishnu has a four-handed form, and when he himself enters the hollow of the universe, he lies down on the ocean of milk and is known as Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Somebody was asking this, I think somebody was, sometimes I'm not sure what everybody's asking when they ask questions, but I think one of the questions from the lady's side, and I can't remember exactly, but what's the relationship between Garbhodakshay Vishnu and Kshirodakshay Vishnu? How are they situated within the universe? Well, this Lagu Bhagavatamrita description tells us that Kshirodakshay Vishnu enters the hollow of the universe. So before he enters the hollow of the universe, Garbhodakshay Vishnu is there, and he enters to the universe. It's sealed, it's very hot, he perspires, half of the universe fills with water from the body of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Maybe it was someone who was asking, is the Garbhodak ocean and the causal ocean the same? That was your question, right? So, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, if you remember one of those images, he's on the ocean, the Garbhodak ocean, it's all really big wavy, and Anantashesha is there. Lord Brahma is coming from his navel. So that's in the lower half. Then there's the upper half that Lagu Bhagavatamrita is referring to as the hollow of the universe. That's where the ocean of milk is. That's where the planet that the demigods go to when they pray at the ocean of milk. It's in that upper region. It's Dhruvaloka. It's the topmost planet beyond Brahmaloka. It's the topmost planet that all planets are revolving around because it's Lord Vishnu's planet. Within this universe, there's one planet that isn't destroyed. when the cosmic manifestation is destroyed, because it's a spiritual planet. And that's the abode of Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. So what we're hearing in this reference, again, the source of this is Tamal Krishna Maharaj's manuscript, where he's saying, it's okay that there's this little mix-up between the Lord who's lying in the ocean of milk, generates from his navel pit the lotus upon which Lord Brahma appears, because they're actually one and the same. Although traditionally, and very clearly actually, it's Garbhodakshayi Vishnu who is the source of Lord Brahma, the source of the lotus. So that's just a little bit of clarification on this point. Is that okay? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go on to text 22, which continues chronologically with the description of Lord Brahma's appearance. So let us chant together. Evam sarvat sambandham nabhyam padmam harir abhut tatra brahma bhavad bhuyas chaturvedi chaturmukha. Translation. The divine lotus, which springs from the navel pit of Vishnu, Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, is in every way related to the spiritual by the spiritual tie with all souls, and is the origin of four-faced Brahma, versed in the four Vedas. So, the description, I'll summarize first and then read a little bit. Garbhodakshayi Vishnu has entered into the universe, taking with him a universe's worth of jivas, meaning all the jivas were injected into the Mahatattva. The golden seeds, spiritual seeds of universes, went forth from the body of Mahavishnu into the Mahatattva. Elements started to cling to them. The demigods of those elements prayed. The Lord then gave his spiritual potency by which they could properly combine, and he personally entered into every atom of material creation so they could perform their product or do the proper functioning of a universe. That was Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. Garbhodakshayi Vishnu enters within each universe, fills up half of the universe. And as he enters the universe, those jivas that are in the Mahatattva, some portion of them, he carries with him as he enters, and they're now in his body, as they were previously in the body of Mahavishnu. They're in the body of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. And similar to Mahavishnu's contemplating, I wish that these jivas could experience their ultimate happiness, which they're naturally entitled to, but unfortunately they're bound in this great misfortune of susupti, deep sleep, and forgetfulness of their real identity. So now they're in the body of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, along with, so there's several things. All the subtle bodies of those living entities, all the karma, that's a lot of karma, all the karma of all the conditioned souls that are within this universe, or each universe, they're within the body of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. And we're going to hear also the subtle not yet manifest universal form, or the structure of the universe, and the situations in which those living entities will, when Lord Brahma gets around to it, create the universe. The subtle form of that is within Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And of necessity, because he's going to pass on to Brahma the understanding of how to form the universe. So, we've heard this description that all things take time to form. So as he's contemplating this, bringing forth the living entities for the purpose of giving them the opportunity to attain the fullness of their ultimate happiness, while contemplating that, a lotus or a bud appears from his navel, representing or manifesting the total karma of all the living entities. That's what the bud of the lotus is said in scripture to be. That's a lot of karma. And it then grows, and atop that lotus is that lotus flower, and Lord Brahma appears. And we're going to hear some additional things about Lord Brahma and his unique position. We heard a little bit of it this morning. In Bhaktisiddhanta's purport, he also mentions that this is the Brahma of our universe, and he comes from the prototype Brahma, or Hiranyagarbha Brahma, that we heard Mahavishnu manifests in text 15, if you remember. From his right side, Lord Brahma, from his left side, Vishnu, and from his brow comes the prototype Shambhu. So it's the prototype Hiranyagarbha Brahma that manifests this Brahma that appears on the stem of the lotus from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Although he's within his body, it's like an expansion, the power of Brahma to do his service. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto, chapter 8, Maitreya gives a detailed description of this appearance of Lord Brahma. In that section, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, "The combined karma of all the jivas was merged within Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He saw all the planets plus all beings, from Brahma to the inanimate creatures, inside himself." This is their subtle feature. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying, before even Brahma appears, the subtle manifestation of all these parts of the universe were seen by him. He gazed upon them, their subtle features, with the view to manifest them outside himself. That's the end of his comment. So the planetary systems are there in their subtle state, the forms of the living entities and the karma of those living entities are there in their subtle state within the body of Mahavishnu, awaiting the subcreation, Brahma's appearance, and him to assemble the whole thing. So Maitreya then continues, describing this to Vidura. The subtle, quote, this is a verse, text 13 from chapter 8. The subtle subject matter of creation, on which the Lord's attraction was fixed, like even before it happened, he's meditating on this or fixing his gaze upon all of this within his body, was agitated by the mode of passion, and thus the subtle force of creation pierced through his abdomen. Now he's not agitated by passion, but the desires of the living entities are. And passion brings about activity. And this navel, this lotus, pierced through his abdomen. And our acharyas comment that this subtle subject matter of creation is the sum total of the jiva's subtle forms, subtle bodies, and their combined karma. So he was contemplating those things, and then it pierced through his abdomen as a lotus bud. And then gradually the lotus bud unfurled into a lotus flower, and one of the living entities who were within the body of Garbhodakshay Vishnu was named Brahma. And we're going to hear some things about Lord Brahma. Piercing through this sum total of fruitive activity of living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Vishnu, and by his supreme will illuminated everything like the sun and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Because this is now speaking about either at the end of the day of Brahma there's a partial devastation, or the end of the life of Brahma there's a total devastation, and the waters of the devastation are everywhere. So this is speaking of the birth of Lord Brahma, not just the day of Brahma. So curiously, the lotus is said to be luminous and so effulgent that it dries up the water of devastation. Which is interesting, because it is said when Brahma appears, everything in all directions is darkness. But there's some light coming from somewhere, coming from the stem. In his purport to this verse that we just chanted, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur describes Lord Brahma as the image of self-enjoyment. The statement helps us understand a little bit about Brahma's position, because he has to create the life forms and all the different species and all the varieties for all the living entities to match their karma by which they intend to enjoy. At least that's their expectation. It doesn't work out that way, but they're hoping for enjoyment. So he is the sum total of all of that, the image of self-enjoyment. So that's text 23. We're just going to do 3 more verses. Excuse me, that was 22. Here's 23. Sanjato bhagavat shaktya tatkalam kila chodita shishrikshayam matim chakre purva samskara samskritaha tadarsha kevalam dhantam nanyat kim api sarvataha. Translation. On coming out of the lotus, Brahma, being guided by the divine potency, turned his mind to the act of creation under the impulse of previous impressions. But he could see nothing but darkness in every direction. So the standard explanation about this verse is Brahma had a previous existence before he became Brahma, and that previous existence was akin to what he's about to do, that is, create. it is said, at least in one place in scripture, that the post of Brahma may be occupied by one who for 100 lifetimes flawlessly executes varna and ashram duties. Try to do it for 1 hour or 1 day, or the month of Kartik, or something. 100 lifetimes. So he's extremely qualified, exceptionally qualified. And there are some impressions, just like we discussed this morning, but as we get up in the morning, every one of us, mostly we get up in the morning. Some people have night jobs and they don't get up in the morning, they go to, anyway. But we get up in the morning, whatever time is we get up, then there's remembrance of our identity and our duties and responsibilities, and we begin performing them as a continuation of what we did before we went to sleep. So when Brahma is born, he then just naturally continues those activities that were there from previous impressions. As we do, he does, or as he does, we do. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his purport to this verse, explains that the nature of each living entity is connected to their previous activity. He has a long explanation of all of that. The same conception is described in many places in the scripture. Here's one of them from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya is discussing with Sanatana Goswami, or instructing him. Lord Chaitanya says, because of his past pious activities mixed with devotional service, the firstborn living entity, Brahma, is influenced by the mode of passion within his mind. Such a devotee is empowered by Garbhodakshay Vishnu. In this way, an incarnation of Krishna in the form of Brahma engineers the total creation of the universe. So this Shrishti Shakti, or the potency to create, is invested in Brahma. Before, as soon as he is born, he's got this divine power to create. It's passion. Creation is passion. So he has this passion to create. At the same time, he's highly, superlatively pious and religious, perfect in the execution of his duties for 100 lifetimes. Now it's create a universe, not just like design a software program or whatever, start a business or raise a family or something. It's build a universe. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Maitreya Muni further describes the appearance of Brahma in this way. Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as the Supersoul. And when it was impregnated with the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the self-born, was generated. So, Kshirodakshay Vishnu is there within this lotus. Brahma is also there, makes his appearance. In Prabhupada's purport to that verse, that's 3.8.15, an important one, we mentioned it in the morning class also. This lotus flower is the universal Virat form. you know, the one that Arjun saw? The lotus flower is the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world. It becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Vishnu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution, and it becomes manifest at the time of creation. So, periodic creation, dissolution. At the time of creation, the lotus appears. At the time of dissolution, not the lotus enters his body, or the stem of the lotus enters his body, but the subtle feature of that which is later going to be the universe in its gross form exists in its subtle form within the body of Mahavishnu, or Garbhodaksha Vishnu, during the period of cosmic annihilation. This is due to Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who enters into each of the universes in this form, is the sum total of all the fruitive activities of the living entities conditioned by material nature, and the first of them, namely Brahma, or the controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. This firstborn living being, unlike all the others, has no natural father, and thus he is called self-born or Swayambhu. Some of this is a little repetitive. That is, you know, the sum total of all the fruitive activities of all the living entities. That's what the lotus is. It's also the structure of the universe, because all those living entities need a place. And there's planets, and there's locations of those planets. And it's all there in a subtle form. Now it's being manifest in a gross form, in the form of a lotus. Okay? Just two more verses. Here's text 24. Uvacha purvatas tasmai tasya divya saraswati kama krishnaya govinda he gopi jana ityapi bhalabhaya priya bhanir mantram te dashyati priyam. So this is the first mantra, mantram te dasyati priyam, that Brahma receives. We heard about this mantra in verses 2 and 3, and they're inscribed in the yantra. Now here is Brahma receiving the mantra from Saraswati, and as you recall, a number of times it's been repeated that a name has to do with how one views things. This is not the demigoddess Saraswati, the wife of Lord Brahma. This is Rama Devi, and one of her features, she who is Rama Devi when she's giving knowledge, is the internal potency named Saraswati. It's that Saraswati. So the translation reads, then the goddess of learning Saraswati, the divine consort of the Supreme Lord, said thus to Brahma, who saw nothing but gloom in all directions, O Brahma, this mantra, Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopijana Ballabhaya Svaha, will assuredly fulfill your heart's desire. Well, in his purport, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says there's two heart's desires. One is material. He wants to create a universe. That's been described. He's from previous impressions. And being invested by that potency by Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he has a desire. This mantra will help fulfill all desires, including the material ones. But he has a strong spiritual desire, self-inquisitiveness to understand self-realization, and the source of his emanation, the Supreme Lord. In the purport, I'm just doing summary right now before some detail. Bhaktisiddhanta speaks about the role of kama bija, this kleem, how the mantra begins. It's a kama bija, and its function is it fulfills desires, again, both spiritual and material. In his Krishna Sandarbha, where the same ideas as being presented here are also discussed, Jiva Goswami says that in his commentary. I'm going to present summary ideas more elaborately in Krishna Sandarbha, because the topic of Krishna Sandarbha is Krishna, and the topic of Brahma Samhita is Krishna. But Krishna Sandarbha is very voluminous, and this is very skinny. So it immediately connects, in other words, with this very same topic. Jiva Goswami says in his Krishna Sandarbha, the spiritual demigods who protect the Goloka planet, remember the 10 Digpals that appear in Svetadweep? He says that they're described in the Rig Veda, and he quotes the Rig Veda, many eternally perfect and glorious demigods protect that spiritual world. And in the Padma Purana, they're also described as follows. Many eternally perfect, glorious, and handsome demigods serve that spiritual planet. Padma Purana is describing Goloka, as Srimad Bhagavatam does, and Sri Brahma Samhita does. So in that reference, there's protectors of the spiritual world. And Brahma makes his appearance in this world, in this place of within the universe where there's no light, there's just darkness. And he's self-inquisitive, like we should be. He's strongly self-inquisitive. He wants to know, where am I? Who am I? What is my function? What is my purpose? He has this impetus to create, but how am I to do this impetus thing? So the Bhagavatam describes the same Canto 3, Chapter 8. He uses his reasoning power, like we do. And he reasons, well, here's a lotus, and I can hear the sound of an ocean beneath, because there are waves and he could hear. So if I climb down the stem of the lotus, then I'll find where I came from. Inductive logic. So he starts climbing down the stem, and climbing down the stem, and climbing down the stem, and he gets as far as he can go, and he realizes it's not going to happen this way. By logic, it seemed reasonable. By sense inspection, it's not working. I'm not finding my origin. And then we know what happens. He hears the sound. Tapa, tapa. The verse reads, Lord Brahma in his ignorance contemplated, who am I? That I am situated on top of the lotus. Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards. And that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water, because he heard the waves. But he couldn't find the end to it. Maitreya continues, O Vidura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time which is the eternal wheel in the hand of Lord Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity, like fear of death. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord, because he had heard this message, tapa. Now, a little side note here. A few things. In the second canto, a similar description comes, and the Lord Brahma that's described in the second canto, when he meditates upon the Supreme Lord, his tapasya is, as we see here, this mantra. He then sees the Supreme Lord. That is to say, the Supreme Lord reveals. It's a very beautiful description. Imagine, it's like, it would make a great movie. It's darkness in all directions. And for 1,000 celestial years, which is a long time, he's engaged in this tapasya of meditating upon his mantra. And then suddenly, the spiritual world is presented, revealed before him. And he rises and he enters into the kingdom of God. And as he approaches, there's what's called the Yogpith, the central place where the Lord is seated. And surrounding him are the 16 and the 9 and the 5. And it's these transcendental personalities that are the personifications of all the things that we find down here. They exist in their spiritual identity surrounding him, and they're glorifying him and praising him. And as he approaches, the Lord stands and extends his hand and shakes Brahma's hand. Welcome. And Prabhupada's comment is, this is the gesture of friendship. That Brahma spoken of in Canto 2, Chapter 9, has the rasa of friendship. But we're going to hear tomorrow morning about Lord Brahma spoken of in Sri Brahma Samhita as having a relationship as a eternal maidservant, or a gopi, or madhurya rasa. It's because there's different Brahmas. In each universe there's a Brahma. And then there's, after the universal cosmic annihilation, then another Brahma. So there's variety of Brahmas. And there's even different descriptions of how Brahma achieves his realization. But our acharyas say there's certain elements or patterns that are always there. And there's variety within those patterns. And one of those patterns is there's always tapasya. Because for self-realization to take place, there must be control of the mind and senses. There must be control of the mind and senses. So to control the mind and senses, initially, like the Bhagavatam uses this metaphor, to get fire, supposing you have wet wood. You have to first make the wet wood dry. So you take the wet wood and place it near a fire so it can dry, then you can put it in the fire. Two-step process. So similarly, tapasya, and not just doing things that hurt or that are painful, but tapodivyam. And in the case of, it is to be performed. In Brahma's case, it was chanting of his mantra. And for some of us, chanting our 16 rounds is also tapasya. But it's a transcendental tapasya that is meant to, even if one is in the impure condition, one can become purified by contact with the Supreme Pure Krishna in the form of his holy name. So his tapasya was the chanting of this mantra. And so Prabhupada comments, I'll read what Prabhupada says about, it's from the first verse of the Bhagavatam, 111, purport, and he speaks about chanting of Gayatri mantra. And he says that one must be qualified. Looking for the reference. Anyway, can't find it. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as far as these two features of the mantra, the one is it may help one fulfill material desire. This particular Gayatri, it's not a Gayatri, it's a Gopal mantra. But it can also help fulfill spiritual desire. And the language of Bhaktisiddhanta is very nice. So in the case of the devotee who is not of unmixed aptitude, that means they're very singularly focused on the aspiration to attain Krishna, this super excellent mantra fulfills his heart's desire. And it has the tendency, it tends to make the pure soul run after the all-attractive Sri Krishna, the Lord of Gokula, and the divine milkmaids, like enthusiastically. It inspires and enthuses the heart's spiritual desire. So prior to that, we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and then after some purification of Hare Krishna mantra, we receive this Gopal mantra in our Gayatri initiation or second initiation, Brahminical initiation. To chant it properly, anyway, I can't find the quote. Prabhupada is saying that one must be genuinely qualified. Otherwise, the effect isn't going to be the same. Here's one nice reference. How Brahma approached the chanting of this Gopal mantra that he received. In Gopal Tapani Upanishad, he speaks the following: I continually glorified the Lord and meditated upon him for millions of years, and at last I was able to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as Sri Krishna in the dress of a cowherd boy. With devotion in my heart, I bowed down before him. He gave me the 18-syllable mantra to be used for the activity of creation, and then he disappeared. So tomorrow we're going to hear of his receiving the 18-syllable mantra, or Kam Gayatri mantra, which expressed here is Krishna spoke it to him. In Brahma Samhita, it's he heard Krishna's flute. And then Kama Gayatri came from his mouth. But we'll hear about that tomorrow morning. And our last verse, we're nearly done. Tapas tvam tapa etena tava siddhir bhavishyati. Translation, O Brahma, do thou practice spiritual association by means of this mantra, then all your desires will be fulfilled. So you better watch out what all your desires are when you chant this mantra. Interesting note, we normally think of tapa as austerity, or even more specifically, spiritual austerity. Bhaktisiddhanta is calling it here spiritual association. To perform tapasya is to have spiritual association. That means tapo divyam is association with the personality of Godhead. For us, say Vaishnavas, we observe vratas. On Ekadasi, we have some Ekadasi vrata. During Kartik, we may have some Kartik vrata. And we observe some restrictions, some austerities. But the purpose of those is to qualify, help qualify ourselves to approach Krishna. So that's very nice. That's what spiritual association means, to bring one closer to Krishna. And tomorrow we'll discuss in the morning, 26, if you want to read in advance, 26, 27, and 28. And then after breakfast, we'll discuss the few verses that come at the very end. And then the Sunday evening is the closure, just the last 2 verses. And we're done. Cross the finish line. And that's part 1. And another time we'll have to cover all the Govinda prayers. That's going to be lots of fun. Not all technical like this. I've said it a couple of times, but I don't mind saying it again. This subject matter in all of the BBT publication is probably the most complex and perplexing. But if you bear with it, it's there in this Sri Brahma Samhita, a whole chunk of verses discussing it. And this book is a book that Lord Chaitanya, when he received it, he started dancing in ecstasy. Of course, because it's about Krishna, but all of this is also in relation to Krishna. If we understand it in its proper way, all of these different steps and stages and unfolding of creation has a transcendental purpose, and it's all connected to Krishna. Krishna's interest in bringing us back to him. Like this nice description of this mantra and its hexagonal position. But if chanted properly, it enthuses us to run after Krishna and the associates of Krishna. And we'll be really looking forward to discussing and exploring with all of you the Govinda prayers. That'll be very nice. But putting that in the setting of all of what we've discussed, I think it will increase the appreciation all the more. So, any questions? Yes, Mataji. You're very patient, thank you.
Hare Krishna. One of my first questions is, Lord Padmanabha is the person who has a lotus coming from his nabhi or the navel. So how is Lord Padmanabha related to Kshirodakshi Vishnu and the Garbhodakshi Vishnu?
I didn't get it.
So how is the Padmanabha, the Lord Padmanabha?
Okay.
Name of the lotus flower.
Yeah.
So how is he related to?
It's another name of the same Lord. It's another name of the same Lord.
So he is the synonym of Kshirodakshi Vishnu or the Garbhodakshi Vishnu?
Garbhodakshi Vishnu.
Okay.
Another name of the same Lord.
Okay. My second question is that when Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, his and Rukmini's son was Pradyumna, and Krishna's grandson was Anirudh, who got married to Banasura's daughter, Usha. So how is it that one of the 4 major forms of Krishna include Pradyumna and Anirudh?
Why not?
It's the same person as opposed to his son and grandson, right?
It's just Leela.
So even
It's Leela. Why not?
So his sons and grandsons are also expansions of Krishna?
Yes, yes. Why not? It's Leela. It could, if you can rewrite the Leela and have it done, it's more suited to your sensibility, and then that would be okay too. But it's Leela. It's Leela. One of Krishna's sons, Pradyumna, is one of the Chaturvyuha. And his son, Aniruddha, is one of the Chaturvyuha. Why not? Why not? If you're Krishna and you want to have Leela, you can have it however you want to have it. That's how Krishna has it. Why not?
Okay.
No difficulty. And not only that, who's Krishna's sister?
Subhadra.
Subhadra. And she's Yogamaya. And she marries Arjuna, who is Krishna's dearmost friend. It's Leela. And they have a son, Abhimanyu. And he gets killed in a merciless way.
My third question is the Klim Krishna Govinda Gopi Jana Vallabhaya Swaha.
Yeah.
The Swaha is usually used for
Yajnas.
Yajnas,
Yeah.
right? So does Brahma do a fire sacrifice?
No.
Or?
I'm not expert in this subject matter, but my understanding is as follows. The conventional way in Vedic yajnas where swaha is used has a particular application that's distinct from the application in this mantra. It's the same word, but because of the function, its meaning and the application of the sound vibration is different. The one is offering oblations unto the fire, swaha. So in this case, it's offering of oneself, swaha. It's self-submission unto Krishnaya, Govindaya, Gopijana, Bhalabha, or Bhalabhaya, swaha. It's similar but different.
And what is the syllable-to-syllable meaning of clean?
It's Radha Krishna in short. But are you going to be around tomorrow morning?
Sure.
Okay, we'll discuss it because in verse 27, this is 25. Tomorrow we'll be discussing 26 and 27 and 28. So 27 is Kam Gayatri, which also begins with the clean. So we'll hear something more. But what we heard already from Jiva Goswami, the clean represents or indicates Radha Krishna. See that chart on the right-hand side with the lotus, with the yellow corolla in the middle? You look closely at it, you'll see in the middle is Radha Krishna underneath a desire tree. And that's clean, Radha Krishna. And surrounding them is Krishnaya, Govindaya, Gopijana, Vallabhaya, Swaha, in a six-sided figure, hexagonal figure. That's the mantra inscribed on that diagram. But that was verses 2 and 3 of Brahma Samhita. Okay?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you for your patiently waiting till the end to ask your question. Yes, online. Go ahead.
Maharaj, there are two questions online. One from Arvind Prabhu. He asks, is a prototype Brahma not from Jiva Tattva?
We covered that. The answer is not Jiva Tattva. Next.
The next question is from Chaman Sahu Prabhu. He asks, who keeps track of karmic history of a living entity?
Who keeps track of?
Karmic history.
The karmic history of all living entities?
Yes. And where is that information stored, within the soul or elsewhere?
Both. It's within the mind, not within the soul, and elsewhere. Chitragupta, he's got a good record. Yeah.
So Maharaj, this Kama Gayatri, it is said that when you chant that, it makes the soul run after all attractive Sri Krishna. So why is that it is limited to only chanting 10 times for the second initiated, Brahman initiated? Why not more than that? Or
There's some discussion on that topic, and it's for us, it's the regulations of sadhana. Like, why 16 rounds? Why not 16 million rounds?
16 is the minimum, right? We can
It's a minimum regulation. It's a daily sadhana. That's why. Brahma just, we don't have the capacity to do what Brahma did. He did it for millions of years, when there was nothing but darkness in all directions. We'd go stir crazy. Yes. Nanda Sutta? You got another one, okay.
So from the morning's discussion, so this prototype Brahma, after getting created from Mahavishnu, where does he reside?
I don't know. Nanda Sutta?
There's just a clarification, like as we have been learning in this verse 24, again, the goddess divine Saraswati spoke, so she's a consort, and looks like she also appeared with Brahma, correct? It's not a...
No.
No?
No. No.
So how did she speak of this?
Let's do it again. Rama Devi, who is the eternal, internal potency of Mahavishnu, has another name. Saraswati, that aspect of her who gives transcendental knowledge, Saraswati, the divine goddess Saraswati. She has other names, Yogamaya, Yoganidra, she's got lots of names, but she's one entity, internal potency. That personality gave the mantra.
That she gave the mantra.
Okay?
Okay, that's fine. And another thing she says, that it will fulfill your heart's desires.
Yes, right.
So did Brahma had any material desire?
Yes, he wanted to create a universe.
And
now we can qualify that and say, well, he wanted to do it only for one purpose, for serving the Lord. We're going to hear more about that in the final verses, but it's understood that type of material desire. And then for us, how do we manage? We have propensity to serve, but there's some affinity for the service and the enjoyment of the service, not exactly the enjoyment of Krishna's senses. So how do we manage that? That's our final topic.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
No.
Oh.
Yes, you're on.
Oh, okay. Maharaj, I was just wondering that I had been told that when we come down, we become Brahma, but then other people have told me that we don't, and it's kind of a random question, but when we come down from the spiritual world, do we originally become Brahma?
There's a place in the later cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam where Prabhupada makes that statement. And then it's expanded by our acharyas by saying, or one of the essential demigods like Varuna or Indra, etc. So that statement is there. Is that satisfied? Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. When Lord Brahma
finishes his meditation and he gets the enlightenment. I skipped this part where you said he has a vision of the spiritual world, or he actually enters the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan.
In the ninth chapter of the second canto, verses, in the like 25 to 30, like in that range of verses, it's Vaikuntha. It's the Lord in Vaikuntha. That Lord Brahma in chapter 9 of Canto 2. Our Lord Brahma, or the one that's described in Sri Brahma Samhita, he sees, as he said, Krishna playing upon his flute. And he sees himself, he understands that his position is a milkmaid. But that's after chanting this Kam Gayatri, which hasn't happened yet. This one is just understanding his relationship with Krishna as his eternal servant. But Krishna is the object. And then he goes further and understands the particular relationship with Krishna. And then he goes further and understands the details of those things. So depends on each Brahma, or in our case also, it depends on what our relationship with the Supreme Lord is. This question was asked earlier. Okay?
Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah. We have an online question? Okay. Mataji's got something. It's on. You're on.
I have a question on the Brahma Samhita itself. Why is it that we have only the 5th chapter and not the other chapters on
They were lost.
And when was this?
This was found. This is the first class. You can go back and listen. I recommend hear the recordings of all these, so you'll like these are nice questions, natural questions. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know is Lord Chaitanya, he went on a tour from Puri through all of South India for 2 years. And one of the places he visited was the Adikeshava temple way in the south of India. When he was there, he had association with some of the learned brahmanas at the temple. And in the course of their discussions, he came to know they had a copy of chapter 5 of the 100 chapters of Sri Brahma Samhita. And he read it and discussed it with them, and he found it so enlivening. But the other 99 chapters are not known. They're lost. So he made a copy of that and brought it with him back to Puri and began circulating copies, handwritten copies. Okay? Online questions, go ahead.
Maharaja, a question from Monica Mataji. She asks, how does understanding the topic of material creation help us in our spiritual practice?
I'll say a couple of things about that. One is quoting Sadaputta, a very pithy little statement. The way that we view the world has a profound impact on how we view ourselves. So, most religions speak of God as the creator. There's some that don't, but most religions speak of God as the creator. And we have this notion that God creates everything. But we also have, a little competition on the side with material science that says, no. This is rubbish. It's just blind sentiment. So if we have a very clear, step-by-step non-falsifiable, using a scientific term, description of the process of creation, and that very clear connection of everything is unto a supreme person, then everything that we do has a connection with that supreme person. I'll say the same thing in a different way, but it's the same thing. There was a period of time when I was making presentations on mysteries of the sacred universe by Sariputta, because I was fascinated by Sariputta and his work. So I got into it and sorted out all his message. And I was making this presentation in different venues. One of those venues was the University of Houston, the Indian Graduate Student Association, IGRA, or IGSA. And I remember it very, very clearly. Guru Bhakti arranged it. It was in a little mini auditorium, and the place was filled with graduate students, like smart Indian graduate students. And this whole presentation on the Vedic cosmology. And at the end, one of the persons had raised his hand and said, modern science, through laws of physics, has it figured down to a few milliseconds what happened before the Big Bang. Is there anything comparable to the Big Bang in Vedic cosmology? And then, before I got to answer the question, then another one raised his hand and said, and modern science has it all figured out that what happens as the universe expands after the Big Bang is they have two theories. One is that as the gravitational force stretches and stretches, eventually it can't stretch anymore and it implodes back upon itself and goes back to a singularity. And the other one is it just stretches and stretches and it dissipates into nothingness. So then it has two things to respond to. So one was, Prabhupada was asked that question once about, is there something comparable to Big Bang? And then he asked him, what is Big Bang? And then he said, it sounds like something like the universes, as they come from the pores of Mahavishnu, they enter into the Mahatattva, and then they start to expand, like someone was asking, the expanding of the universe. But then at some point they start contracting, because they're going to then again enter into the body of Mahavishnu. And then resting for some time, and then again another exhalation, and expanding, and then withdrawn back into the body of Mahavishnu. And then this picture, I said, but you've also just given me this other thing that says where everything begins from and where everything ends up. It is the picture is everything begins from nothing and it ends up in nothing. So what do you think is your statement of what's in between nothing and nothing? It's nothing. That's your picture. Your picture is a picture of nothingness, of meaningless nothingness. And our picture, this picture, has empirical information, like, measurable distances between planets and the periods of their orbits and all that kind of empirical stuff that's so precise. Long before there was any technology of Hubble telescopes mounted on spacecraft that you send out and zooming around and send pictures back and then make measurements, and then you figure out the distances of things and the orbits of things. Before there was all that technology, they had the numbers down. Now, how'd they have the numbers down before they had technology? Good question, huh? Graduate students, good question. Because there's a higher realm of knowledge. There's Vedic wisdom. And in this picture of Vedic wisdom, not only the numbers are accurate, but everything starts with a person, in the end everything is the person, and in between there's person. That's our Vedic model. And it's not sentiment. It's listen to it very carefully. Here, I'll just say it, same thing in a slightly different way. Our Bhaktivedanta Institute invited a Nobel Prize winner scientist, physicist, to study, to take 2 months, go to Bombay at the Bhaktivedanta Institute and study Kapila Dev's teachings on Sankhya philosophy, which has a lot to do with the unfolding of the universe, the elemental development from the pradhan state to the 24 elements, and then their combining of those elements. And his assignment was, is there anything that you know of in your field or any field of science that would falsify this model? And the answer after 2 months was, there's nothing that will false. It doesn't prove it's right, but there's nothing in modern science, empiric science, that proves it false. It can't be because. And he wrote a little booklet on it. And it was like, it was nice experience for those of us that have a science background, and here's a Nobel Prize winner person saying I can't say it's right, but it's certainly not wrong. And that's the best you can get a scientist to say about anything. So it's not blind sentiment. In other words, there's a person behind, a divine person behind all of this. And so when we're doing back to the question, when we're doing our sadhana, it's not just, exercising our sentiment muscle. It's connecting to the Supreme Person. And this world in which we live, look around, look in any direction, you're going to see matter. Above you, below you, to the left, to the right, behind you, in front of you, in any direction, there's matter. And we have to see this in relation to its source of emanation. It's, sambandha has to be there. And let it not be a sentiment, let it be knowledge. This is how it came to be, the way that it is. And as it moves in different shapes, what's behind it? What moves it? It's surely one can go back to Godhead if one doesn't understand all these things. But to understand these things, it's there. Proper sambandha gyan, according to Haridas Thakur, is necessary for achieving the fullness, the full benefit of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And how far can you go? You can see, we're just scratching the surface. I'm giving you some stuff out of the volumes and volumes of stuff that explain these things. So it's compelling. We're on the right track. Our sadhana is not just a sentiment. It's connecting us to the personality of Godhead. Anything else? Another one? 2 more. Go ahead, do the online.
Yeah, Arvind Prabhu asks, Brahma is 78% perfect, but Shiva comes out of Brahma's eyebrows and he's 87% perfect. How do we...
This is a college question. He can appear however he wants. That's my answer. Go ahead.
So, Maharaj, the 24 elements that have been differentiated in the Mahatattva, you said that like 5 to 7 elements get clinged onto the seeds, which are into the, so what happened to the rest of the elements? Do they still stay in the Mahatattva? Or?
We'll send a text message to Mahavishnu and ask him what happened. Yeah, I don't know. Got all used up, I guess. Just enough. So much flour and so much spices and little water and stir it up and it all got, you made a nice chapati. Nothing left over. Go ahead.
This question is from Brajari Prabhu. He asks, Lord Brahma's not finding an answer even after going down the lotus stem. Is that like telling us that we need Krishna's mercy and cannot find him by our own endeavor?
Exactly. I thought I had said that, but he will just say it in case I didn't. The Prabhupada comments in that regard. This is Brahma's realization of the limitation of speculative methods and empiric evaluation to find the cause or find the absolute truth. It's not to be found that way. Yes. How many what? How many verses?
Are in the chapter 5, Prabhu?
62.
Thank
62.
you.
Okay? Okay. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you everyone to attend this wonderful class. Tomorrow is the final day and we shall resume sharp at 7 o'clock. Today most of you came on time. Please be on time and that way we can finish on time. Hare Krishna.